Okay, so hello everybody and welcome to a very special episode of the Prospect podcast recorded here at Labour Conference. My name is Ellen Halliday and I'm Deputy Editor at Prospect.
And I'm Alona Ferber, I'm Senior Editor at the magazine.
So we're recording today in Liverpool at the Labour Party's annual conference. It's Sunday the 28th of September. It's the first proper day of the conference during which thousands of delegates, Labour Party members, MPs, businesses, lobbyists will convene here at the ACC in Liverpool Docks.
This is Keir Starmer's second conference since he got into power, and if maybe last year there was still some of that triumphant glow of the big win of July 2024 election, this year the conference has been preceded by polling showing reform ahead of Labour, and with Keir Starmer setting out his pitch yet again for meeting the challenge from the hard right of British politics.
And while the government might be hoping that everybody here spends the next few days talking about its plan to build 12 new towns or the Home Secretary Shabana Mahmood's pledge ahead of conference to tighten rules around migrants getting indefinite leave to remain, much of the chat here will also be about Starmer himself, who's had he's got a dicey few weeks ahead, let's say.
Yes, and has had a dicey recent few weeks. And so today to talk about the current very tricky political landscape and to look back a little bit on Labour's first year and a bit in power, we are joined by two very special guests, two MPs who first won their seats in 2010 and 2012 respectively. You can help us understand a little bit of the mood of the party as the conference begins. So first we'll be speaking with Stella Creasy, the MP for Walthamstow. Thank you so much for joining us. We're delighted to have you here with us. And we'll be joined after that by Lucy Powell, MP for Manchester Central, who's of course running to be Deputy Leader of Labour. Stella, thank you so much again for joining us. You became an MP in 2010, as I just said. You just told us before we started that you first came to Labour conference when you were 19. And we worked out that's 29 Labour Party conferences.
People get time off for good behaviour.
Not you. So you waited a very long time, even longer than I had realised, I guess, for a Labour government. Now we finally have one. But a bit over a year into this government, if the polling is any indication, there are a lot of people who are frustrated by or disappointed with this government. A YouGov poll this week has reform at 15 seats short of a majority on 311 seats if an election were held tomorrow, with Labour on 144 seats. It's just a poll, but it's still an indication of that frustration. We're clearly in a major political moment and a crisis for liberal democracy. Starmer has said he's in a battle for the soul of the nation. Do you think the Starmer government understands...
But apart from that, Mrs. Lincoln, how was the play?
Apart from that, do you think the Starmer government understands well enough the dark moment we're going through as a country?
Oh, look, I think we are all acutely aware that there is a battle for the future ahead of us. But in order to be able to fight that battle, we need to understand how we got here, because actually the challenges, and I know this will seem a strange one to argue, I think the challenges that we are facing are entirely of our own making. I was very struck, I don't know whether people here read Patrick Maguire's piece on Saturday about the Labour movement and the challenges that it was facing, and his concern that there weren't enough reckless young men to be able to, restless rather than reckless. What a folk by those, to be able to reinvigorate the Labour movement and find our soul and our mission again. Well, as a probably obsolete middle-aged woman, I have some thoughts on that. And my first thought is that if we want to expose the idiocy, the danger and the risk in our opponents' ideas, whether it is being a vaccine denier or being pro-Trump, as we see that Reform clearly are, or whether it is wanting to leave NATO and, as they did last year, put forward a manifesto denying women drugs in childbirth, which was on the Green Party manifesto, we first have to be comfortable with ideas ourselves. And the reality of this party at the moment is the biggest challenge we've got is cultural. We've all stopped talking to each other. We've all stopped listening to each other. And this idea of restless young men who are impatient for change, actually across our movement, I meet people all the time who are impatient for change, but in an environment where we are not drawing on the broadest range of voices, we're not working to actually make the best out of everybody. This isn't a comms problem, it's fundamentally a cultural problem.
How is it? Listen, sorry.
So I see it firsthand in the PLP. Look, I'm very comfortable. I joined the Labour Party before I went to that first conference. I've been in this movement over 30 years now. I've probably disagreed with every Labour leader on something, and I've fought for every Labour leader to be Prime Minister. I didn't join a cult. I joined a political movement with a passion and a purpose. We are now at the point where people want to believe the line is the line and nothing else must change. And that is how you get into the debacle on welfare. It's frankly how we get into the debacle we're going to get into on ID cards.
It's just about factionalism then. Is that the issue here?
Actually, no, it's something deeper. And I've watched it for many years because I've been a Labour Party member for so many years. I remember when we all used to go to the pub with each other after the GC. I'm looking at everyone in this room, they're all nodding. I don't think that happens anymore. The respect that somebody might hold a view sincerely is critical, not necessarily to agreeing with them, but to understanding what their view offers you. And at its best in our party, and its best in politics and in Parliament, debate, discussion, disagreement stress tests an idea. It actually helps get you to a better place. I know that more than most. Many people here will probably remember that I led the campaign to tackle legal loan sharking, the payday lenders. When I first started campaigning on that, I was arguing for a cap on interest rates. And lots of people disagreed with me, and they were right to do so. And in disagreeing with me and pushing me and arguing with me, we got to a cap on the total cost of credit, which was fundamentally a better policy. The challenge that we've got right now with the groupthink, I've seen this word being bandied around, and it's absolutely right, that we've built in the party, is that we're not taking on each other's ideas. We're not showing actually where something is right, where something is wrong. We look scared of our own shadow. So my big appeal to the Labour movement, first and foremost, is to fix that culture. We don't all have to agree with each other, but we do have to give each other a space to be heard and value the fact that each of us at the end of the day will need to deliver the leaflets, will need to be out campaigning, but will also need to be able to show the passion of why this movement matters. Because if you don't do that, the public don't think you want that either.
Yeah.
So we are our own worst enemy when it comes to showing why this matters to us and what drives us, because we're driving out ideas and energy from the party as a result.
So much of kind of where Labour has always obviously got its energy from is also, you know, its political opponents. And this is a fast-changing landscape. The same YouGov poll that, you know, that we've talked about mentioned that the Conservatives could be, you know, having a mere 45 seats. So people talk about the potential disintegration of the Conservative Party, at least as we know it. What does that mean for Labour going forwards? And does that kind of worry you about what it would do to Labour to lose that traditional opponent?
No, what I'm worried about is that we have the courage of our convictions and we show the British public why we fight for office. Because there are two rules in politics. Number one, don't mess it up. Don't do basically silly things. You know, don't be inappropriate. Don't. I mean, it seems a fairly self-obvious rule, but, you know, don't put your foot in it, because actually it matters to be able to show the public that you're worth electing. But number two is make it count. And make it count means it has to mean something. So look, I'm not here to sit and with glee make fun of people joining other political movements or the disintegration of the Conservative Party, because I see something more fundamentally, which is the public are saying to us, do any of you make a difference at all? What is the point of any of you? So frankly, I'm not worried about Kemi Badenoch. I'm worried about all of us. I'm worried about what message we are sending the British public about the future we're fighting for. Because I'll tell you, there's a bitter truth. Our opponents can be as crazy as they want. The public are angry with us. So actually, they will entertain them anyway. Stop waiting for other political movements to fall apart. Start working to make this the best that it can be. Start remembering why you all joined it and what you are fighting for. And yes, that means having debates. Yes, it means having an argument. Yes, it means having a passion for something. When I first joined the Labour movement, the factions weren't about left or right. They were things like whether you were passionate about animal welfare or climate change or electoral reform. Now, some of those things still all sit here, but they used to sit along the spine of what we thought social justice meant. The biggest con man of all is Nigel Farage, who's offering you an analysis, not an answer. Because his analysis is the world is unfair, here's who you blame about it. And at the moment it's immigrants, or trans people. It'll probably move on to women at some point, maybe even Meghan Markle eventually. None of that changes the world. The reason why we built that spine of causes and campaigns that we wanted to work on as a movement, because we recognised the injustice that they represented, was the outcomes that we could achieve with them. But we've lost that way of talking and that way of working as a movement because we've lost the ability ourselves to have those conversations.
You're saying there's a lack of kind of debate within the party, and you're saying kind of Farage has the wrong answer to the country's problems. But obviously, the government is, has done various things, focusing its energies on the challenge from the reform. The comments just now from the Home Secretary on tightening indefinite leave to remain, something we weren't even talking about before Farage raised it as an issue on Monday, makes it sound like the government is continuing the strategy. So you're saying it's not the right thing to do, but beyond having a debate, what is the right thing to do?
Because actually what I worry about, frankly, is I feel like sometimes we sound like we're 6 months behind where the public are talking about things. And actually that's not just about concerns about immigration, that's concerns about Europe, it's concerns about childcare. We look like we're being led rather than we are leading people into the conversations we need to have about the future that we need to create. I, like a lot of people, spend my time looking at maybe I'm not, maybe it's actually nobody else does this, previous conferences, previous passionate moments. Everybody remembers or has heard the Nye Bevan thing about politics and socialism being the language of priorities. But actually, that's conference speech that he made. He also argued for the value of having a movement where both Hugh Gaitskell and Barbara Castle and himself were all heard and part of the mix, and that it wasn't disunified. It was actually about a chorus of people standing up for things. And he also argued that, and I'll quote it for you, parliamentary institutions have not been destroyed because the left was too vigorous. They've been destroyed because the left was too inert. And I think that's a very powerful message that resonates, I think, with many of us right now about that sense of actually, why aren't we on the front foot? Fundamentally in this country, the biggest challenge we face is a cost of living crisis. There are too many people with too much month at the end of their money. So when someone comes along and tells you who to blame, that's very seductive. It doesn't change that. And frankly, people on the other side of us are doing that too. We came into this movement to take away the barriers to injustice because we could see the talent that wasn't being realised as a result. And the reason that you do that, and the reason that you fight that cost of living crisis, and the reason that you fight those barriers that are social, cultural, the hatred and hostility towards immigrants, the idea that equalities now is not for everybody, the idea that we're going to sanction out trans people, the idea that we are going to somehow give in on the fact that we can't make our asylum system work, and therefore we should stop having an asylum policy altogether, is because it's too important to get it right. There's too much talent at stake, too much opportunity that hasn't yet been realised that could benefit all of us.
We've talked about kind of the challenge from the right and that Labour needs to maybe solve some internal issues and, have proper discussions itself in order rather than kind of looking outwards. But what about the left? How do you see the left beyond Labour, and how would you sort of meet the challenge from the Greens, from your party, for example?
Well, look, I see it as two parts of the same coin because they're getting away with offering an analysis but not an answer. Everybody can say the world is unfair. My parents used to hear me say that, and they always say their biggest regret is they said to me, well, what are you going to do about it? And they've ended up having me as their MP. What we have to do is set out a vision of how we can actually address that inequality and that injustice, not because we're doing things for people, but with people. So I think about socialism as a springboard. It's not about people having somebody come along and run an education service for the sake of it. It's because if we get education right, somewhere in my community is a kid who could cure cancer. But because we live in a world where the bank of mum and dad is often now the biggest inequality that our young people face, they never get the chance to go on the training courses or the education course they want. We don't get that talent out of them, and we all miss out as a result. So we have to tell a story about the kind of future we could create if we stopped dividing people and start working out how to springboard the passion and the opportunity and the talent that they have inside them. Now, that does require some difficult choices. Absolutely, we've got to raise some money. And I know you're going to have a session about wealth taxes. I actually think, I think Dan Needle makes a pretty persuasive case on this, but I also think the biggest thing that Dan Needle's saying is all the time we're talking about wealth taxes, we're not also talking about all the loopholes in our tax system that could also raise billions of pounds. We have to look at everything. I mean, I would put him into the Treasury as tax loophole finder general. But we then have to also make an argument about where we can save money. So one of the things I've spent 15 years fighting is PFI, because at the moment there are some trusts spending more money repaying their PFI debts than they are on drugs in the NHS. Fundamentally, PFI is the legal loan shark of the public sector. If we actually consolidated those debts, we could save some money to put back into reorganising our healthcare service. And I think the public also need to see us understanding their lives and being able to join things up. most people here probably know me as the lady with the baby, and I spend all my time talking about mothers and childcare. Do you know why I talk about childcare? Because it's one of the reasons why our economy is sluggish. There are 1 million women in this country right now who are on benefits and welfare because of caring commitments. Now, most of that is childcare, or it's some of its elderly relatives. If you want to have a conversation about welfare reform, if you want to have a conversation about productivity, tackle the fact that there are nearly 1 million women who could be doing things that if we got our childcare system right, if we got our tax system right to support them, flexible working right, they could pay for it through the taxes they pay and your welfare bill would be cut. And showing people that we understand how to join up the areas of their lives shows them that we get their lives in a way that, frankly, some of the debates we're having right now doesn't suggest.
I want to just, we're nearly out of time with this interview, so I want to ask you one final question, if that's okay. Just taking back from, you touched there on women's rights and childcare. We talked before about this kind of this idea that there's a lack of kind of restless young men with ideas in the party. We also have a party that still hasn't had a woman leader, when even the Conservatives have had three of them. Is part of the cultural problem to do with a kind of, is it a lack of, it's not just about people.
Let's be honest, Alona, are we talking about the sixth sense? I see women. Listen, if you can't understand the value in each and every one of us in the labour movement, how are we going to show the British public that we understand the value in each and every one of our people in our country? And that is what all of us came into politics to do. The reason I'm a socialist is because I believe in getting the best out of each of us for the benefit of all of us. But if we don't act like that as a political movement, is it any surprise that you're getting the conflict that you're seeing now, which comes from people's frustration that they can see something they care about, but they're not being heard? So we need to change the culture first to unlock that talent. The alternative is what you get now, which is if you treat people like children, don't be surprised when they throw their toys out of the pram. And the British public don't want to see that either. They want to understand that we see their lives, that we have ideas. This is what this conference could and should be. In 29 years of coming, it used to be exciting about the ideas that you might be heard from the conference floor as well as from the leadership. It's that communication and engagement, because it's that passion that brings us all together. We don't all have to agree to be able to work together, but we do have to be able to speak to each other.
Just one more question before we really let you go. Do you think that Keir Starmer is sort of laying the groundwork for a more illiberal politics?
I don't know, because we need to be able to have a conversation about what liberal and illiberal politics are. I am somebody who's done a lot of work on refugee rights. I am somebody who is passionate that immigration is a good thing in our society. I absolutely want to stop the boats. I had somebody tell me the other day that those two things are mutually exclusive. Until we actually have a proper conversation about why it is that people are getting on boats. One of the reasons why I'm so passionate about international aid development is because actually reducing the conflicts in the world that are making people feel that they cannot stay in their home countries would be a really positive step forward. Let's have the conversation. Let's not put people in boxes. And yes, let's see 100% of the people in the room, not just the 49% of men.
Stella, thank you so much for joining us.
This interview was from an episode of the Prospect podcast. To listen to the episode in full, including further discussion and our weekly banger and dud section, click the link in the description below. And to read more of Prospect's award-winning journalism, head to prospectmagazine.co.uk.